Okay. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover the working title is From Dysregulation to Connection. And we're really going to focus on the nervous system. And I don't know how many of you have gone to trainings where it talks about how to regulate your clients or what happens when your clients are dysregulated. So we are going to cover that, but we're going to focus the second half on how do we regulate, right? Like Bonnie said, we're getting information constantly as we attune to our clients. So when they come in different states, how do we ground and how do we find tools? How do we find ways to move towards connection? And that could be with ourselves and that could be to our client. Okay. Very quick about me. I'm Dr. Megan Mitchell. I founded Agents of Change, started with test prep. Now we have moved into continuing ed for mental health professionals. I've been doing clinical social work for over a decade, and my primary focus has always been children and youth. That's primarily, I also work with adults. I constantly keep going back to school, but I am done now because I have my doctorate, but I just do love to learn. So I love creating this content. I love going to different CEs that we offer as well. And then also I am currently a lecturer at the University of Michigan in the School of Social Work. So that's just a little bit about me. And this is just the logistics, right? Course objectives, you can read it here. I'm not going to read for it word by word, but what we're going to cover nervous system states that includes hyperarousal and hypoarousal. And then we're going to talk about window of tolerance. We're going to talk about what those clinical presentations look like. And then we're going to talk about co-regulation and self-regulation. So how do we move towards co-regulation with our clients? And then how do we self-regulate? And as you can see here, here's a brief snapshot at our agenda and some of the points that we are going to work through. Okay. So, and I'm going to try to make this as interactive throughout. If there might be times in the chat where I say, throw your ideas into the chat, because this is such a large group, obviously everyone is muted because that would be kind of chaotic to have 500 plus people come off mute, but we will use the chat. And I might throw out some questions. And this is what I am very big on. You all have your own learning style. So use this time in a way that's going to be helpful for you. You can be as engaged or not as engaged as you would like in the chat. Okay. So let's just kind of lay the groundwork here. I really like this quote. When a client is dysregulated, the body may be asking, am I safe enough to connect, think, and reflect? Oftentimes in the therapy session, when we're working with clients, when we see behaviors, when we see shutdown, when we see what might be labeled as resistance, it's probably the body sending a signal that I don't feel safe right now in some sort of way. That could be conscious or subconscious, right? How many of you here work with kids, interact with kids, have had kids, right? I always say this, when a 2-year-old or 3-year-old throwing a tantrum, are you going to say, let's stop and think about what's going on here? They're not going to be quite responsive to that, right? Because their body in that moment's not feeling safe. They're not ready to connect. So we always want to think of that, of when a client is either upregulated or downregulated, they're probably not in a space where they're going to be able to be thinking and reflecting, right? So we want to work to get, and this is why I say sometimes just straight talk psychotherapy is not appropriate for the client at that time, right? There needs to be some sort of regulation to even get to the place where they can talk about it. Okay. So behaviors communication, all behaviors communication. There is some sort of need that is being reflected when anyone behaves a certain way, right? And this is often reflected in what you see. So this could mean I feel unsafe. I'm overwhelmed. I don't have the language. I don't have the words to tell you what's going on. Regulation before reflection. Similar to that case I just gave you about the tantrum, a client's not going to be able to reflect if they're not regulated, right? Because the nervous system is sending signals that I need to go into safety mode or protection mode. And I'm not here to, if you think of the hierarchy of needs, right? Like I need to work on my safety first. Okay. So it's going to be really, really, really difficult to get into that insight oriented work where, how many of you have worked with clients and, you know, even if it's in an intake and you're asking questions and you get, I don't know, or the shrug, or you're not getting much of anything all the time, right? That probably tells us that the client is not in their window of tolerance and there's some defense mechanisms or something is there to preserve their safety, right? So what we need to, and this is not like a quick fix, right? Like sometimes this can take time. So we want to work to getting them into a safe place in the therapeutic space where they feel safe enough to move out of survival mode. I've had some clients I've been working with for years, and I still think we're not in our window of tolerance yet. We might have glimpses, like we might have moments, but generally they come in very dysregulated. So you just need to be able to catch those glimpses, catch those moments before reflection can happen. And then connection is our job here, right? Like we are working to connect with the client. We are working to attune to the client. And that is making sure we are regulated so that they can feed off of that regulation and they can start to regulate, right? If we're not feeling safe, if we're feeling threatened, if we're feeling shut down, if we're feeling checked out, we're not going to probably have the most productive session, right? So we need to come from a place of regulation first before we can even connect with the client. Okay. I'm sure you are familiar with this, but here today, we could get into even more specifics, but just for today overview, here are 3 nervous system states. There's hyperarousal, regulated or connected. Some people might say that's within the window of tolerance, right? And then there's hypoarousal. I'm going to explain what these 3 different states, we're going to call them nervous system states, are. Hyperarousal. This is kind of when I work with kids. So this is what I say. It's when their energy is running fast, right? So think of when like you've ever been in a situation and your adrenaline kicks in and you're like in go mode. This would be hyperarousal. You are getting the energy to mobilize survival mode. Okay. What might be some of the signs we see? Racing energy. Anger might come out here because I'm going into fight mode, panic, and also urgency. I have to do it right now, right? I see this all the time with clients. Like we have to do this right this second. That they would be in a hyper arousal state. So I always say like running faster. Regulated, and that's why we have it kind of in the red zone. That's just, I'm a visual learner. So for me, that's how my brain thinks of like running fast. Kind of like I like to think of it as a thermometer too, right? Running high on the temperature scale. Regulated, connected, that's green. That's kind of our window of tolerance where we can best connect, right? We feel safe enough. I have enough physiological energy to preserve. So what might you see here? You might see clients or yourself approaching with curiosity. They're able to ask questions. They're able to be flexible, right? I'm present, I'm engaged, I'm able to have a conversation with you. This is when everything is kind of in balance and we are able to move to that reflection state, have those conversations, right? Hypoarousal, it's in blue because usually this is when your energy, I say energy, is running a little bit lower. You're shutting down or preserving energy. I need to conserve my energy to survive. So what might this look like in the therapy room? This might be when you see some clients kind of more checked out, right? Maybe the shoulder shrug, or it even says here collapsed. I've seen clients slump over, right? Or lay down on the couch that I have. Their brain might feel a little bit foggy or having difficulty forming clear thoughts, or you might just get the straight disconnected where like it seems like they're physically present, but they're not connecting in the session. Okay. I like this statement here. Our goal is not to keep clients perfectly calm, right? That's not realistic, right? Like I said, there might be moments where we are regulated and we're connected. But the goal is to help them move flexibly across these different states. In any sort of day, we probably go through each one of these multiple times, right? It's how easily or how difficult is it to get back to a regulated state. Like I said, I have some clients that they're dysregulated most of the session. We might get a glimpse of connected. And the goal is to help them notice that and help them to move towards a place of connection. Okay, for visual learners, here is just, I know some people learn better by visual. So here's a visual of hyperarousal, regulated hypoarousal. Generally, we're going to be higher stress. And I don't like the word stress, but I think stress is meant to be like energy activation is a word that I like. For hyperarousal, and then regulated, it's more in the center, more balanced. And then you're going to see the activation decrease with hypoarousal. Okay. Stress, events, different things push us outside of our window of tolerance. Okay. So I want everyone here, we're just going to do a little bit of a reflection. Take a moment to look here. This is a flame, right? I'm not going to give much context. When you see this, what happens to your nervous system? What comes up for you? Are you in your window of tolerance? Is it heightening your activation, or is it lowering your activation? Go ahead, just looking here, just looking at a flame. What's happening for you in the body? And what's really interesting, I encourage you to take a look, is we're going to have people in every single different state, just looking at an image. And that is due to we each have our own stories. We each have our own ways that we interact with the world, right? So I see some people saying, I'm heightened. I see some people saying, I am in my window of tolerance. And then I have some people saying it's lowered, it's calming to me. So we're going to do a visual here because the senses, right, often give us input. So this is a visual input here. We're looking at a picture of some flames. What's really good is to know what state certain inputs bring you to. So that's your next slide is going to be, I hope the sound works. It's going to be the same thing, but with sound. Okay. So I'm going to move to the next slide. And I want you to tell me once there's sound involved, what state your nervous system is in. Any luck there? Got it. Okay. Now hearing the sound, what I want you to put in the chat. I'll play it one more time. What happened there? Hearing a different input. Okay. I just want everyone to take a moment to look in the chat and how different every single response is, right? In the chat, what was it for those of you that changed? Some people might have been the exact same activation state. What changed with having input that was sound? Heightened. So some people might be more sensitive to the sound, right? Where some people said it feels even more relaxing, right? Maybe your brain is connecting the sound of a flame, the sound of crackling fire, to a positive. Where some people, right, they might say danger. Maybe that they were in a traumatic event with fire, right? So you really need to attune to yourself and to every client that comes in too. But I just did this as really a very easy exercise to show that every person's tolerance is different, right? And our different senses change. I can't obviously recreate a bonfire for you, but the smell of fire might activate a different state for you, right? Yeah. So it's really, really, really interesting that we use our senses to help us make sense of safety. Okay. This could be something you do with a client too. So yes, I'm doing this as a learning activity, but this could be something you do with the client to help them. Very low stakes, unless of course they are involved in some sort of traumatic event with fire or trauma. But like it could even be a picture of, I don't know, a flower or something. And you just have them start to recognize what state they're in there. Okay. We're going to go through the different stages quickly. Hyperarousal, this is when we go into adrenaline, and I like to say this is when we're going into action mode. They might be talking faster, irritable, I have to do this now. What might be some body signs? Tension, bracing, restless. So someone said fidgeting, right? Like bouncing their foot, wringing their hands. I also say looking at the door, right? Like kind of that hypervigilance. And here, they might seem distracted. And it's going to be very difficult for someone to reflect when they're distracted or their body's thinking like danger, 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 right? Clinically, what do we do? So a client comes in here, what do we do? Slow it down, right? This might be where we start to slow down our pace. Lower the cognitive load. So what does this mean is you might want to present some like easier questions or just kind of say like, let's just sit for a little bit and get ourselves regulated. You might use a grounding activity, like, and you might want to name it. It seems like you're really distracted. Oh yeah, you're right. I am. I've got this on my mind, right? Okay, let's just take like a moment here to just pause. Here, avoid power struggles when possible. So if you have a client that is in hyperarousal and you're continuing to say, oh, can you answer this question? What about this? What about this? What about this? Do you think that's going to go very well for you? No, right? Like you might, because someone that is hyperaroused is going into that fight mode, it could actually be very negative for you and for the client. You're not going to get what you want from it, right? The client's just going to feel like they're just asking me so many questions. Now I have to answer them in rapid fire, and it's going to create a very dysregulated therapy room. Hypo. So we're not going to talk about window of tolerance because that's like different for everyone. But what happens if a client comes in and it moves into a hypo arousal state? This would be when we're conserving energy, right? I'm going to check out because my energy needs to be conserved for safety. It might look like sleepiness. It might look like fawning. So what might this look like in the therapy room? Flat, low energy, monotone. It might seem like they don't want to be there, right? Like just kind of, yeah, slow movement. They might suggest that they just, I don't know, shrugging the shoulders. Reduced eye contact. I see this a lot, like just kind of like maybe looking off into a distance, kind of just look like I said, they're physically there, but mentally they're somewhere else. You might see the body collapse. And this might be where they're having a very difficult time accessing memories. I don't remember, right? Because the body's going into that conservation. What do we do clinically here? You want to make sure that they can activate up, they can upregulate, but in a safe way, right? So I've actually done this, like I've used essential oils. Like here, how about we smell some peppermint? That actually can upregulate you, kind of brings you back, right? So some sensory input, or touch, right? Or maybe like I've had some clients that come in and they're very, very hypo-aroused. And they have some favorite music that they like. So we've made a playlist together, and that really helps them get more comfortable there. Maybe some small movements. I offer flexible seating in my office, but I have fidgets next to it. I also have like a bouncy ball or a spinny chair that we can start to bring some movement in. You might use some closed choices here, like do you prefer this or this? So they don't have to do too much of that higher level thinking. Avoid shaming shutdown as avoidance. This is huge. I know we often say the client's being resistant, the client shut down. I encourage you today to reframe that to why. Why might the client be shutting down? Why might the client be avoiding, right? And this could be when you throw out any idea you had for the session out the window and you're just like starting from scratch, right? I offer snacks in my office, right? So why do I offer snacks? Because that can be a regulating option for some people. Someone said, what about for telehealth? Like you could encourage them, do you need to go get a drink of water, right? Do you need to stand up and stretch? Can you find an item that is comforting for you, right? Or like, do you need to take a little break? bathroom break. So just different things. You just have to really be creative and flexible. Okay. Here's a little check-in question. For you personally, this is going to be once again different. Which client state of arousal is most difficult for you and why? So is it hyperarousal or hypoarousal? When a client comes in one of these states, what's harder for you and why? And I can tell you, actually, for me, hypo is very hard because I kind of run a little bit faster. So when a client comes in hypoarousal, I want to jump in to fill the space. So it's really hard for me. I have to sit and slow down. Where some people, if someone comes in hyperaroused, it's going to be very disorienting, very dysregulating. And it could depend on the client, right? I hope today you're just using some of these reflection questions as a chance to know for you what's activating. I know we often throw out the word trigger, but to me, trigger just means what's activating, right? You could have I don't know if anyone works with kids. I'm sure many of you do or have your own children. I have some times where a kiddo comes in and they're so dysregulated, my office is destroyed by the end. It's very dysregulating for me, right? So I have to find a way to move into my own tolerance to be able to meet that hyper arousal, right? Because for me, it's activating when all my stuff is all over everywhere and it's not in the places that it should be. Yeah. So it's just, this is important for you to think about, just a reflection. And oftentimes it does depend on the client. So it might be, and it depends where you are, right? Maybe you're super, super sleepy that day. So like a hypoarousal client's gonna meet your energy because you're a little bit lower energy. Or if maybe you're super, super, super sleepy someday and a client comes in and they're very hyper aroused, it's gonna be hard for you to match that activation of the energy. Okay. So now we're going to talk about window of tolerance. So window of tolerance is our ideal state. We can't be in our window of tolerance all the time because that wouldn't be life, right? Like we have stressors, we have things that activate us, but we want to make sure that all of these different areas are regulated so that we can think, we can connect, we can choose, and we can recover. Think of this, if someone is constantly in hyperarousal, hypoarousal, they're not going to be able to recover, right? We're not going to be able to stretch into that zone of regulation. Okay. So what does window of tolerance look like in the body? Generally, like you're in a soft posture, your system feels, your body, you feel safe in your own body. If any of you work with clients that have trauma, a lot of times people don't feel safe in their body. So it's a lot of somatic work to get someone to even connect to their body. The mind. So what does the mind look like when someone is in a window of tolerance? Flexible thinking, rational thinking. I can hold feeling and meaning at once. I'm able to connect that way. Relationship. I'm able to connect. I'm attuned. I don't lose myself. This is huge. Sometimes you will find yourself with clients, you feel like you're losing your sense of self in the room because you're so, you're almost over attuned, right? Where you're starting to lose some of that, you're starting to blend their energy is moving into your energy. So window of tolerance would be that you are present, but you're not losing yourself and your own regulation in the relationship. And then behavior, if someone is within their window of tolerance, they're making rational decisions, right? They're not acting impulsively. They're able to think and rationalize through their behavior. It's not easy, right? Like I just think of in a day, there's like a lot of times I'm not within my window of tolerance. You know, maybe you're driving and like someone cuts you off, right? Like you're probably going to go into hyperarousal because there's different stimuli that interact with us throughout the day. What is co-regulation? I'm sure you've heard of co-regulation, but I want to say this is I'm sure you've heard of co-regulation and attunement. Those of you that work with clients, when you are co-regulated, when you're attuned to a client, it is so mentally and physically taxing. You might actually end the session tired because it takes so much from us, right? So co-regulation is using, we are safe, we are attuned, and the energy our nervous system is giving off is going to calm the threat down for our client, right? So it's when we are calm, we have a calm voice, we're able to pace the session, we feel safe, our client feels safe, they don't feel alone, they don't feel as overwhelmed. This is hard, right? I think that we think, oh, we're just going to be co-regulating all the time, we're going to be attuning. It is really, really, really hard. How many of you have left a session and you're just like, wow, we were not attuned, right? Like that was a really tough one, right? It happens all the time. How many of you have left the session and you're like, that was so productive, that was a great session? So it's not going to be that, the goal is not to be co-regulated for every single client all the time. That's just not realistic. So it's just being mindful of those moments where co-regulation did exist. And it is okay if you do find yourself out of tune, right? We are human beings too. That's like, we're going to get to what we can do, but we are humans. We can only hold on so much for ourselves and for our clients at the same time. Okay. So I want you to now to kind of think of, how do we view our clients in the therapy room from a nervous system lens? Instead of thinking, what is wrong with this behavior? Or coming from a deficit model, or why won't the client use this coping skill? Why are they resistant? Why I can't break through? How can I get them to think differently? This happens all the time, right? We get frustrated. What can we do to reframe, to shift our thinking from a nervous system approach? So let's think here, what state are they in? Oh, they're in hyperarousal. Let's think a little bit deeper. Let's conceptualize why that might be. What cues of safety or threat are present? So if you are seeing resistance, if you're seeing people that are maybe having some behaviors, they're not making the treatment goals that we have set for them. Why, right? Are they in a sense of feeling unsafe, or do they have a threat present? This is huge. I have to take a step back and think of this often when I'm asking questions and I'm getting a lot of shoulder shrugs and I'm just like, okay, are they able to reflect right now? Why or why not? Right? I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we're doing something wrong, but it could just be the client's not in a state to reflect right now. Okay. So I also want you to think about, what is one small shift I can do to connect right now? Okay. So like, you're not going to probably have the most profound session you've ever had when a client's nervous system is activated in some sort of way, but what's one small shift you can get to have a moment of connection? Okay. I'm now going to talk through a quick model of ways that you can be with a client in the room. And it's pretty simple, right? It's, you track them, you regulate, and then you can reflect. It's really kind of a hierarchy to help us assess where our clients are, how we can move towards safety, and how we can move to that insight. I'm not going to go too deeply in this. It's pretty straightforward. But what do? You track, you regulate, and you reflect. What does tracking mean? We need to be observing, right? If you're not observant of what's going on in the therapy room, it's not going to be a good session, right? Like if we are not able to observe. So we need to notice. We are generally intuitive people, I would think, as social workers, mental health professionals, counselors. But how many times do you notice a client comes in and they're just off? This happened to me yesterday. I'm like, something is off, right? Like that is the noticing. That's the tracking. Like they might look teary, they might look frustrated, they might look distracted, or maybe they even look physically different. Like you can tell something is off. So this happened yesterday. A client came in very, very off. I said, what's going on? Oh, nothing. It was a child, got through the session, found out that right when they were walking into the office, they lost part of their necklace. And they're like, I can't stop thinking about how I need to go out of the office and check the sidewalk, see if my necklace piece is out there. oh, okay, that helps me a lot. This client was very preoccupied, right? There was something off, something was on their mind. So you got to track, you got to observe. Regulate. So bring the system back into their window of tolerance or find those moments of connection, right? So if they're hyper aroused, how can you ground them? How can you slow? Or if they're hypo aroused, how do I activate? This client, we ended up doing some sort of big body movement because the client came in very hypo aroused and sword fighting. I have these foam swords was the way that this client was going to upregulate from that hypoarousal. And that we kind of have a menu in my office of like things that help that client specifically. So that was the menu option that client picked. Third is reflect, right? So like I said, that client that came in yesterday did not tell me what was going on until about 30 minutes into the session. So they were not regulated. Once they were regulated, oh, I'm really actually thinking about on my necklace. And I'm really sad because this necklace was really important to me, right? I was not going to get to the reflection right away. I had to track. I had to get them to a place of regulation. And then I had the chance to reflect with them, right? That just happened to be a linear thing. Sometimes you might not even get to the session before they can reflect, right? You might be working on the regulation piece most of the session. Okay. So, here's some things to do. Hold on, let me just move my screen so I can see. Okay. Tracking. Before you're doing anything, you're observing, right? So what do you track? Track their breath. How quickly are they breathing? Where are their eyes? Where are they gazing? What's their voice? This client came in like almost whispering, right? And that was not usual. Posture, they looked kind of defeated. They were slumped over. Skin, this is important because I've had clients come in and they look very flushed, right? They're very hyper aroused, or they like look very pale, or I want to ask questions about that. And then what's their affect like? So we know the different nervous states. The second is regulate. What intervention do we do, right? So if they're hyper aroused, we want to down regulate them. You can orient to the room. How about we put our feet on the floor? Would you like a sip of water? Let's just take a minute here, right? You're running really fast. You're really activated right now. Let's just take it down a second. If they are hypo-aroused, we want to upregulate. So what might this be? Bilateral tapping. This could be like, you can just do it right here. You can cross your arms and just tap your shoulders. Fidgeting. That can be upregulating. Would you like a sip of water? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Movement could help, right? Like, let's just get up and stretch. And then if they are regulated, we want to keep them there, right? So we might ask those questions. Oh, tell me more about that. This is what's really hard. I like the last part, stay alongside the client, but not ahead, right? Oftentimes we're like, we want to move to the next thing. We want to move to the next thing. But when a client is in their window of tolerance and we are in our window of tolerance, we definitely want to just keep the pacing nice and steady. Okay. Reflect. This is when the insight happens, right? So they're able to reflect when these first two steps happen. So what might we ask once they're able to reflect? What did you notice? What's happening? What sensations came up for you in the body? What does your body know that your mind doesn't know yet? A lot of times I have clients that are like, my heart's beating really fast, but they don't have a word to that. Maybe they're anxious, right? Are you calmer now? Are you like, what does this feel like in your body? I like that. Like a lot of times clients don't have the words for maybe an emotion, but they can work with the sensations. We all have sensations in our body, right? Do you know what I do if a client's like, I don't know, I've done this exercise and I'm like, okay, what's your body feeling like? I don't know. I do this. I say, rub your hands together. What sensation do you feel? Like, oh, I feel heat. Like it can be very, very, very simple like that, just to kind of get them a little bit more oriented. If a client isn't regulated, they're going to be flooded or they're going to freeze, right? So we really need to be mindful of this and use that as information, okay? What do you do for the next regulation step? So I'm going to give you a very quick vignette. 15-year-old enters the session. They've just had a peer conflict. So they walk in, they're talking quickly, clenching their fist, I don't care, and looking towards the door. In the chat, so what state do you think they're in? How do you know that? And then what could you say to maybe move towards window of tolerance? And this happens, right? And we might not even know they got in a peer conflict. They might just come in with their fist clenched. Oh, I don't care. I want to get out of here. Yep. I would say definitely hyperarousal. I'd say, oh, do you want to have a seat? Would you like would you like a glass of water? Where would you like to sit? Right? What I like is no one said what had happened. I love that no one has said what happened, right? That would be us jumping in. That's not working towards regulation. So here, a good next step might be like, oh, come in and sit down. Or where would you like to sit? Do you know what I've actually asked sometimes if I see a client come in? Would you like the lights dim or bright? Right? Where would you like to sit? Oh, would you like a glass of water? Let me go get you that. Okay. Very easy things that like we're not getting into the reflection piece. Yes, we're just working on the next regulation step, right? So we might be very activated, right? Like, oh my gosh, what happened? But we need to take a step back and say, here, come on into the space, right? Let's orient first. So things to think about. Okay. I love this and I think it's so important, right? We spend all this money on tools in our therapy room and these trainings and these books and these manuals. You are the most important tool in the therapy room. Like I will say that a million times over. You could have every book and known to existence. Could have taken every training known to existence, and you still doesn't mean that you are a strong therapist. Because you have to use the tools that you have within yourself to be the most important tool in the therapy room. I just love this, right? Like it is so powerful. You are the most important tool. And knowing that there's going to be times where we are regulated and times where we're not. Okay. So what can you do to get yourself in a space that you're able to be in your window of tolerance? Okay. This could be something you do. 5-minute body scan. We probably don't have 5 minutes, but like just kind of checking in. What's going on for you? Where do you have tension? Right. There are times where I'm just prepping for a client and I just do an inhale and exhale. Like, okay, just kind of orient myself. Set an intention. I don't know if any of you do yoga, but they ask you to set an intention before every single yoga class, right? You could do that with this client. Like, I'm going to work on being present, right? Drink water. I always have my water. I eat snacks throughout the session, and some people might have views on that, but I'm like, I'm a human that have my needs need to be met. So I might eat in the session. I might snack. I might drink, right? And this is really important. Try to clear your mind from the previous client. Very, very difficult. Okay. What can you do during the session? Track, right? Like notice is really important. Maybe someone's telling you something and you're starting to get activated. Notice that. Okay. I oftentimes have to like, you'll see me, I've probably done it a few times. I have to like situate my body, right? I'm sometimes thinking slow down, meet them where they're at. I struggle with silence, which is so important in therapy. So I have to tell myself silence is okay. Right? If you drift, we all drift, right? Maybe you're thinking about your to-do list and it's, the Friday before Memorial Day and I can't wait till it's the weekend, right? If you drift, that's okay. Just return, but remind yourself, I'm starting to drift. I need to be more present. What can you do after the session? I definitely encourage you to stand. And if you can, step out of the space. So that could be go to the bathroom, like literally look out the window, something. And ask yourself, like, how did I leave this session? You might find yourself within your window of tolerance, or maybe you were hyper or hypo aroused. 90 seconds of reset can even be good enough, right? I did this yesterday. I had clients back to back. I might say sometimes I'll be with you in a minute, close my door and just like breathe, right? Because when they come in right back to back to back, it's really, really, really tough. Use your consultation, use supervision, use this as care. I don't think we think enough about how consultation, supervision, peer connection is important, right? This is helping us regulate by talking and processing. We need it. So use that supervision, use your peers, use consultation as a way to regulate as well. Okay. So what about us? So you have to start with ourselves. Meet the client's arousal state in front of you, but be prepared. So if you know that like you have a client that's going to be very, this client I'm thinking of that has come in like my office is in pieces after, I need to prepare that, like, I need to be very present for these 45 minutes. I'm probably going to be dysregulated. What do I do when I start to be, right? And then let reflection arrive last. This is for ourselves too. We can't reflect on what went on in a session until after it happened, right? Like, so you want to be present while they're there. You can reflect afterwards. I think that's so important. Sometimes we're reflecting on how the session's going while we're there, but that's not helpful. We can reflect afterwards. We want to attune while we're there. Okay. What do I do first? Do you connect to yourself or connect to the client first? Always connect to yourself first. If you are, so I'll ask this. What happens if you just start connecting to the client before you've checked in with yourself? What could happen? You're going to pick up on whatever state they're in, right? You meet their arousal state. You lose yourself. You're losing your objectivity. You're drifting, right? This is hard. This is really, really, really hard. When sometimes they come in and we get absorbed in it, right? Because we are not regulated. So always, always, always work to regulate yourself first. It's not easy. I say this, right? But this is a thing that we always have to be working on. But if we are not in a place to lend connection, to be in our state that is regulated, we can't lend that to the person, right? So what happens, say a client comes in and they're panicked. Oh my gosh, I bet this just happened. And we meet that arousal state. The whole session's probably going to feel very frantic, right? Because we're going to meet their energy and we're going to be in survivor mode too. So you got to think of how do we regulate. Okay. This is where we're gonna, for the last, little bit that we're together, we're gonna normalize this. You hear self-care, self-care, self-care. Yes, we know that self-care is a problem, but this work is highly, highly relational, and we are constantly in nervous system states when working with people, right? We often hear, maybe you tell yourself this, there's a lot of shame in this, right? I'm doing something wrong. I'm not making progress. So instead of hearing this phrase, I'm activated, I must be doing something wrong, right? This might make us actually start to numb, start to drift, start to hide, or not attune to our own systems, because we always feel like I have to perform. I have to be like the best for this client in this certain way. So instead of moving from I'm doing something wrong because I'm activated, I want us to reframe this to therapy is physiologically demanding relational work. Let's just name it for what it is, right? It is. And I would say it's physiological. How many of you have left like so mentally and physically exhausted after like a day of clients, right? You're just like, the other day I was leaving my office, I only had maybe 3 or 4, but even being outdoors, I felt very disoriented. I was like, whoa, there's like outdoors, right? Walking to my car, I was like, wow. You start to just get into the mode, right? And we forget that we need to ground ourselves, right? So this work is demanding. It's very, very, very demanding. Let's name that, because when we name it and we don't put shame on us being activated in whatever way that is, this is going to help us. It's going to help us as practitioners. This is going to help us as a profession, right? When we can recognize and connect to these different states that we're in, we're going to be able to be providing better support. We're going to be working in a more ethical place, and it's going to be more sustainable, right? How do I shift my mind from fixing to being with, right? This is hard, especially if you're in an agency, you're in a setting where it's like, are they meeting their treatment goals, right? You got this many sessions, well, and insurance sometimes says you have this many sessions before you have to terminate. So how do we shift our mindset from, I'm not going to fix everything, but I'm going to be with, right? What is attunement? It's not absorbing everything. So if you're someone that's just like taking on everything, that's not being attuned, actually, right? Over-functioning. This is huge. What does over-functioning mean? Maybe someone's very, very burnt out. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take on more clients because it will make my ego feel good that I'm going to help more people. It seems very silly, but I have found myself in that or this case sounds so interesting. They need me to take them on because like I can help them. Yes, you could help them, but are you in a place to be able to be with them? Right? We want to avoid rescuing or perfectly regulating every client. That's not the goal, right? Huge one. We can't carry the client emotionally. There have been times that I had to step back and say, I think I'm putting in more effort than the client is interested in doing, right? So I need to put myself in check here. So these are pitfalls that we sometimes find ourselves in, right? Where can we find this regulation? Slowing down, staying present, really checking in with yourself and asking yourself, is this like an ego thing? Like, yes, I really think this is an interesting case, or I really want to take this on. But is it realistic for what I have to give right now? Right? Can I tolerate together these emotions? Can I maintain safety and connection? Right? So if we're not maintaining our safety and connection, which let's talk about burnout. When you have reached a point of burnout, what are some signs that you notice? For me, it's I become very irritable, emotional, eye twitching, tired, frustration, fatigue. Yeah. When you get to these states, right, you are probably not going to be able to maintain that safety and connection that you would if you were fully recharged, right? Very, very, very important to notice. Okay. This is huge. No nervous system can be emotionally available, deeply empathic, highly attentive, and clinically sharp for 6 to 8 hours straight. I know that, like, we have caseloads that we have to manage. It's just not possible without there being a consequence, which is the consequence falls on us, that we will become depleted. What does this look like? Distraction, numbness, irritability, shutdown, what I just talked about. Escape fantasies. Like, how many of you have thought, oh, I'm just going to leave the field and become a barista at Starbucks? Like that is, or I see people laughing. I think of it all the time. Sometimes when I'm burnt out, I'm like, I'm just going to leave the field and I don't know, garden on my spare time. Circus clown, right? Like that means we're probably facing some sort of dysregulation, right? The escape fantasies is real, right? Like, or wow, I wish I could be anywhere but my office seeing clients today. Yep. Or this happens, a client cancels and you're like, yes, I have an hour. They canceled, so that's not great, but I have an hour to do my notes now, or I have an hour to go get lunch that I never get to get. Yeah. How can you build transition time between clients? Even if you don't have 5 minutes, 90 seconds, here's just some things you can do. Stand up, right? Sometimes like I'm just find myself sitting for a very long time. So just stand up, stretch, use the bathroom. I often say, I'm sorry, I have to go to the bathroom. We have to listen to our bodies. Step out, orient yourself, go to the window, look outside, drink your water, reset, sit in silence. I do this sometimes. I have before literally laid on my couch, my therapy couch, and just laid for like 30 minutes in between a client. And it was the best reset I ever had. So how can you build in some sort of reset time that's small, right? Just small, like maybe that's going to the bathroom, drinking your sip of water. We are generally always on, right? Why? Because we're doing deeply relational work. So we need to move from constantly performing over responsibility. We can't function for the client. We can help the client function, but we cannot do the functioning for them. High stimulation between sessions. So if you've ever had to reschedule clients, you might notice who you have back to back or who you have on a certain day matters greatly, right? Like some days might feel lighter than others. Limited predictability. So if you have like clients can just reschedule and schedule with you and you never know who you're going to see, that's going to create an always on state because there's no pattern to that. What can you do for your nervous system? Create boundaries, create predictability. Those of you that need the push to actually charge your no-show fee, if the client no-shows, here's what you need to hear today, charge the no-show fee, because that's your time. Reduce your stimulation, have a realistic caseload, protect time and support. Take your time off, put your out of office on when you're not there, set those boundaries. I love this. Rest is not reward after regulation. Rest is regulation, right? We don't want to say, oh, I'll rest on the weekend. I'll just spend my whole weekend resting. No, in order to be regulated, we have to rest, and that's daily, right? The problem is we work in systems where this is not always possible or it's dictated for us. So it's really, really difficult. Okay. We need to connect with other clinicians, right? There's how many of us here today, and like we are all in space connecting, right? We are often isolated because we do this work. Maybe you're in a private practice by yourself, or when we go home, we probably have partners or family members that like they're not there to support us in that way, right? They're there to support us as our family, but they're not there to support us clinically. So what do we need to do? We need connection. So who's going to connect to us? This is where you use consultation, reflective supervision, encourage you to go to a meetup with other people. Where's a space that you can be collaborative? Like who knows what's going on with you? You need to find ways to remind yourself you're not alone in this work. Find the people that will help you so you're not alone, right? Connection is huge, okay? And I say this as someone who needs to do this themselves, right? I work in private practice and I have to be mindful of, oh, there's like an event going on in my town where there's like a networking thing. It sometimes seems like, oh, that's just another thing to do, but it's really important that we make time for that, even when it feels like there's not time. Know your warning signs. I don't need to say much about this, but here's some things that might indicate that you're getting close to some sort of dysregulation. Bracing, resentment. That's when you might have those escape fantasies. Irritability, dread. Oh, I don't want to go in. I don't want to see this client. Numbness. You might experience this, that you just feel completely detached. You're just kind of there. Emotional exhaustion, distraction. Sometimes if I know I have to be somewhere and like the session's going long, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to wrap this up so I can get out the door to pick up my child from daycare, right? Like there are times where we might notice these things. Rushing and the escape fantasies. Notice first until we're fully depleted, because it's going to be much easier to prevent this versus to be completely burnt out and then you are leaving the field. Here's something we're almost to the end here. So here's something you can do. It's a 90-second reset. Orient yourself. What are 3 things you can see? And I want everyone to do step 2 right now. I want you to breathe in and just let out a really big sigh. So breathe in and just let the breath go heavy. It feels really nice, actually, right? Like I love to do that. It helps regulate. Drop your shoulders and clench your jaw and just like soften your hands. Just kind of bring some lightness to the body. And then name 1 small step you might take right now. Maybe I'm going to go to the bathroom after this and drink my water, right? Return to this in between sessions. You need to, or if you're like, this might be really good if you're someone that brings work home with you and you're like, I need to turn off therapist mode now. Do this so you don't bring it back home into your home space. Okay? So, last thing here, the goal is not to become endlessly available. The goal is to remain human while doing deeply human work. This is my favorite quote of the day. So do with this what you want with it. The work's always going to ask for more. Your job is to know what you actually have to give. There will always be people that need our services. There will always be people that need more of us. There will always be systems and activism and things that need more. But what do you actually have to give, right? It's so true. Sometimes I'm like, oh, but I'm worried about this. And they're like, there's always going to be clients. Like there's people that we are human. So we need this. Goal is to remain human while doing deeply human work. Okay. Know your limits. Whew, this was a good refresher for me too. So like being in connection with you all today. Thank you so much. I hope that you took stuff for your clients, but also stuff for yourself that will just help you regulate and be together in this, okay? So I'm gonna now kick it over. Thank you so much. I should say that. I wish we had more time. We will hopefully have more of these in the future that we can follow up on some of this because it's really important work. I hope you enjoyed this continuing education course from Agents of Change. Want to earn your CE credits for this course? Visit agentsofchangetraining.com or the link in the description to purchase the course and take the post test. If you're looking for more CEs, check out our unlimited plan. You will get unlimited access to 150 plus ASWB and NBCC approved continuing education courses for one low annual fee. We're always adding new courses. Did I mention we also have 5 free CE credits available too? Check it out at agentsofchangetraining.com.